What is up? We are back on Reggie's World Sports. And before we get started, I just want to tell you guys to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, share this episode with your friends and family, and, continue to do all that good stuff. Unfortunately, my birds fell to the Kansas City Chiefs 22-17. It was a tough game. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Disappointing outcome, but look, the team, the Falcons fought hard. They were in it until the end, and it was a tough game. It was a tough game. So many calls that just didn't go our way. And the reality of the situation is, whether, the refs missed this call or whether the refs missed that call, the Falcons just didn't make enough plays when it mattered the most. That's just kind of what it is. They just didn't make enough plays and they fell short. But, look, when you look at this game that happened last night against the Kansas City Chiefs, I thought it was a competitive game. It was a good game. Both teams were moving the ball down the field. They were making plays on both sides. It was a very physical game, and it just didn't go our way. It just didn't go my team's way. And look, I want to give credit to the Kansas City Chiefs. They showcased that when it mattered, why they're the world champions. And they when you look at this Chiefs team, they're kind of reminiscent of like the New England Patriots during the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick era. Like they give off that kind of vibe to me, in which it's not always pretty all the time, and it's not always flashy, but when it comes to those remaining minutes and moments in games, when it's third down or if it's fourth down, they know how to make situational plays. They know how to make key stops. They know how to make key runs. And Patrick Mahomes knows how to make the key pass. And I think we kind of saw that in this game when Kansas City when the Falcons were in the red zone. They were able to stop the Falcons when it mattered. And it's just, it was tough. As a Falcon fan, it was tough because I thought the Falcons played pretty well in the game. I thought they played well enough to win the game. I thought the Falcons, if there's anything to be encouraged by, it's the fact that, hey, the Falcons can play with good teams. They can play with these good teams. They beat Philadelphia last week, obviously. And they had plenty of chances in this game against the Chiefs. Like they had legit chances, and it just didn't fall away. And look, I know everyone's gonna talk about the missed call on Kyle Pitts that should have been a pass interference. And look, I'm not gonna be honest with you guys. That definitely should have been a pass interference. Like I just don't think there's just any other way around it. Like that should have clearly been a pass interference on the Kansas City Chiefs defender, and the Falcons should have had the ball at the 1, and in all likelihood they probably would have scored, and it could have been 24 or 25 or 23-22 or whatever, and Patrick Mahomes would have had the ball with a minute left or so, and who knows what would have happened. But it was tough. It was tough outcome. But yeah, I'm like with every other Falcon fan and every other NFL fan. Like I felt like that should have been a pass interference on the Chiefs. But look, there were other determining factors in that game as well. Like I don't want to like be one of those people that would have said that the Falcons would have won had they caught that pass interference. The reality is, like, even without that call, the Falcons had other chances to make plays. They had a chance on fourth down to make a play. And I think on that play, Kirk Cousins, he underthrew Drake London. And then the Falcons got to stop, and then they got the ball back, and on 3rd and 4th down, they couldn't pull it in. They couldn't run the ball, when it mattered. And so it's tough. Disappointing output. And look, if I when I look at the game on the whole, like if I want to look at like why the Falcons actually lost this game against Kansas City, I think there's a hybrid of factors in why the Falcons had the output that they had. And I think one of the things that I noticed was defensively, Kansas City dominated the time of possession. Kansas City was on the floor for 34 minutes compared to 25 for the Falcons. I think that's one noticeable thing that was one thing that was noticeable to me, was the time of possession that the Chiefs had the ball. Now on one hand, you can say that the Falcons held the Chiefs to 22 points, which is it's pretty good, pretty decent, pretty nice, pretty good, considering that you have Patrick Mahomes on the sideline. But when you just look at it from the standpoint that Kansas City had the ball for a while, in part because the Falcons they weren't able to get Kansas City off the field long enough. Kansas City was 6 for 14 on 3rd down. And if you count the 4th down, they were combined 3rd and 4th down. Kansas City was 7 for 15. And so the Falcons they weren't able to generate any pass rush. And I think that's something that's a little, if there's one thing I'm a little concerned about when it comes to the Falcons moving forward, is that pass rush just hasn't come alive. Matthew Judon, he's had flashes here or there, but it's just the impact just hasn't quite been there as much as we've hoped at this point. And the Falcons just haven't been able to generate any pass rush. Like as you guys know, I've been complaining about the lack of pass rush for Lord knows over a decade plus. Maybe probably even longer than that, like 15 years. I mean, it's been a long time since the Falcons have had a consistent pass rush. And so far throughout the course of the season, it's still an issue. They don't generate pressure on the quarterback. I thought Kansas City was able to, while Kansas City didn't generate any big plays in this game, and I credit the Falcons defense for that. And look, man, the safeties with Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons, hey, those two safeties are the real deal. It's a real deal. Justin Simmons had a nice pick on Patrick Mahomes early in that game, and so credit to him. And Jesse Bates was able to make plays himself in that game. So to the Falcons' credit, they were able to not allow Kansas City to hit them with any home run explosive plays, but Kansas City was able to generate a lot of positive plays. There's a lot of like 10-yard passes and a lot of like 4 or 5-yard runs. Like there was never a time in that game where Kansas City had negative play yardage. And I felt like the Falcon defense, while I'll give the Falcon defense credit for allowing Kansas City to take field goals, and they only scored 2 touchdowns. And so I credit the Falcon defense for that. But they were still on the field for a long time in this game. And I felt like that was kind of like the difference. Like the Falcons offense, it felt to me that they just didn't have as many possessions. Now they had those 2 possessions late in the game, and that's where the Falcons ultimately, they just weren't able to make enough plays. But the defense, it just felt like the defense was on the field too much to me. And so it just, and like you look, Kansas City, Rashid Rice, I think that's his name, Rice, like he was able to make plays underneath a lot of the time, like you run after catch plays, short routes. Patrick Mahomes was able to find him a lot of the time. Like, he was basically their go-to guy. And, the Falcons just, they kind of had their trouble, defending him. And, like, Kansas City was able to run the football. No, Kansas City didn't gain any, like, explosive running plays in this game. But, they were able to run the ball with success. I think they had, like, 39 yards or something? It was 139 yards on 33 carries. And so they were able to run the ball, pretty effectively. And that, look, the defense to me, like on one hand, like I said, they held them to 22 points, but just too many positive plays. Just not enough plays, where Kansas City is like off kilter, where it's like second and long or third and long. Like, it was just like every time it felt to me where Kansas City just, they were kind of on schedule. And I felt like, that was a disappointing output for the defense. Like, they were just on the field too long to me. So I felt like that was a factor in the game. And look, on the offensive side of the ball for the Falcons, like, it sucks as a fan to lose 2 starting offensive linemen. Dahlman left. Caleb McGarry left, our right tackle and our starting center. That was bad, because I thought earlier in the game, I felt like the Falcons offense was doing a pretty nice job of just playing pretty good. And I thought they were able to keep Kirk Cousins upright for most of that time. And then when Dahlman and McGarry got injured and both of them had to leave the game, and look, sending prayers to both of them, and hopefully, the injuries that they both suffered isn't too serious and they'll be able to come back, relatively soon. But I thought the Falcons offensive line just, I thought they were able to pull it together late in the game for the most part. But there was a little bit of a stretch from that late second quarter, early third quarter, where the Falcons offensive line, was struggling to kind of find themselves a little bit. And so I felt like that was disappointing. Obviously, Kirk Cousins through an offensive line struggled at one point. And I think this was Lindstrom, who allowed the pressure, and Kirk threw the interception because of it. I thought that was a pretty rough play on the Falcons offense. And so the offensive line for the Falcons just haven't, missing 2 starters, I thought, hurt for a bit. And, look, I thought Kirk Cousins, I thought he played relatively okay. He had 20. He was 20 for 29. He had 200 and I want to say, was it 40 yards? He had 7.9 per completion or per attempt. And so I thought Kirk played okay. Obviously, look, he can't move. That's the thing with Kirk Cousins. Like, you have to protect him, or else he's a statue in the pocket. And I think that's kind of what we saw, specifically, like, after the offense, specifically when the offensive lineman got hurt. Like, you can tell that Spags, the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, he was sending all of these blitzes. And I thought Kirk at times hung in, and he was able to deliver some shots, some nice balls. But there were times where, like, he was under pressure, and the passes that he was throwing were a little short. And you can tell that he was affected by the pressure at times. And so, but, look, I'm okay with how Kirk Cousins played overall. I thought he hung in tough. You can tell that he's starting to get a little more comfortable after that brutal showing in week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, I like how Mooney, is getting involved. I like what I'm seeing from him. Ray McLeod, he's been good. He's been a really nice addition to the team. I like his run after the catch ability. He's able to make plays downfield. Drake London was solid. And finally, We had a Kyle Pitts sighting yesterday. Kyle Pitts, he had a 50-yard catch, and so there were some things to be encouraged with, offensively for the Falcons. But again, ultimately, when you look at the outcome, the Falcons just didn't make enough plays down the stretch. And look, the fourth down call that ended up being the game, that ended up sealing the game. Look, it was a bad play call for the Falcons. Bad play call. Kansas City has been, and to their credit, the Kansas City Chiefs defense was able to shut down the run for most of the game. The Falcons, Bijan Robinson, and look, I love Bijan, but Kansas City was able to kind of hold him in check. He only had 16 carries for 31 yards. And so it was not an ideal afternoon. And for the Falcons, overall, they only ran for 82 yards. And so the Falcons they weren't able to generate much of anything on the ground, even though Tyler Algier kind of had his moments. But overall, the Falcons' ground game just wasn't there. And so I was disappointed that on fourth down, we wanted to run. We ran Bijan outside, and Kansas City was able to shut that down. Look, I think Zach Robinson has done. I thought before then, Zach Robinson was calling a pretty nice game, pretty decent game. I'm not saying it was great, but I thought he was fine before then. That last play call was bad. To me, in my opinion, I would have had Tyler Algier in there, and I would have either ran the ball up the middle, or I would have just called a passing play and just let Kirk Cousins kind of just wing it out, and maybe he could find Drake London or Mooney for a big play. I would have done something like that, as opposed to just calling an outside zone run to Bijan, because Kansas City they were shutting that thing down. Kansas City was shutting down the run for most of the game. And so I'm disappointed. I was disappointed at that. I'm just very disappointed at that play call. But, look, at the end of the day, the Falcons, it was rough. It was a tough game, tough loss. I thought the Falcons battled. They competed. They hung in tough against the Super Bowl champions. And it was just a tough way to go out. It was tough. But, look, we're 1-2. It's a long season ahead. There are some things to build off of with this game. I think the offense is steadily getting better, steadily improving. I want to see them get better in the red zone. I think that's something that we're gonna have to get better at offensively, is putting more points and converting in the red zone. We're moving the ball for the most part. We've done a good job of that, but we got to convert these field goals into touchdowns. We got to score points, and so that's something that we're gonna have to get better at. Defensively, I wish we can just again find a way to generate some type of pass rush or something. I want to see us get pressure on these quarterbacks, man. I really do. And so, tough one. But look, to the defense's credit, they are doing a good job of they're not allowing those big plays. They're doing a good job of preventing the explosive big plays, so that's been good. But we got to get a pass rush. We just have to. And so, tough one, tough loss. Just tough game. And coming up, we got the New Orleans Saints coming into Mercedes-Benz. And so we got another tough one. Y'all know how it is. That rivalry. I'm F the Saints. I'm just beat them. That's we gotta beat the Saints next week. That's all I got for them. We gotta beat them. We gotta beat the Saints. And so, But again, I mean, it's a tough game, tough output, disappointing loss. And hey, that's all I got for you guys. But hey, what y'all thoughts on the game? Hit me in the comments. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Like, comment, share. And hey, that's all I got for you guys. And hey, talk soon.